But even so, you see the vast majority of people. So this is not something that's being fostered onto people in different countries or that they themselves don't want. Okay, and you can just see what the talk's going to be about. What are the standards people typically talk about? And there are a set of core standards that pretty much every country in the world has signed up to. There's part of ILO conventions. Freedom from forced labor. We don't believe in slavery. Freedom from discrimination. And that's a pretty new standard. You go back to the 50s or 60s in this country when they added the clause about you shouldn't discriminate against women as part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That was added as a joke, because of course you discriminated against women. And until then, discrimination against blacks, against Irish, if you want to have a sign that said no Irish need apply, Jews, whatever group it was legal in lots of states in the country. Lots of states it wasn't. I don't know where Washington stands, but I would assume you were one of the states that already outlawed this. Most of the northern states and the West Coast states did. But the South, it was completely legal. Freedom from child labor is a very interesting one, since they then modify that always. And so here it says starting with the worst form. And the fear is always that if you have no child labor, okay, what are you going to have the children do? If what you're going to do is kick them out of the factory and they're going to go to the street, they're going to be presumably poorer and worse off. So you have to have some program or something to make sure that they're better off and not worse off. So these are not like, what's the word, crazy standards, if I can phrase it right. They're very, very sensible. And then the one that I think is really the controversial one is the freedom of association, which means the right to unionize. And that is controversial because, in truth, many firms do not want that, period. And the fact that countries have signed up to it and they have a law about it, they still do not want that. And so that's probably the most difficult one, I think, there is. But everybody has signed up to these things. I distinguish those from these cash standards, which we can argue about, I think. And different countries have to figure out what minimum wage they want. I'm going to give you some evidence a little bit about minimum wages. Whether we have a living wage and how you define that is questionable, and obviously it does depend critically. A living wage in the advanced country is different than a living wage in Bangladesh. It just has to be. And the other things here. So those are standards, but they're not the heart of, I think, what's going on. So that's the standards. What makes this a global market, and why it is really consistent with or complementary with globalization? As an economist, I'm going to come just to the basic point that consumers are willing to pay more for a product that they know is made under reasonably good conditions, which we can worry about exactly how we define reasonably good conditions. We've done surveys which show very clearly that if I tell you I've got a T-shirt here and it's made by children who are being beaten in a Gap factory in India, that no one here, I don't know, maybe one person will, I don't know, but not too many people here presumably will buy that product. Most people say they won't buy it under any circumstance. And then I sometimes like to say, no circumstance? I'll give you $100 to buy it. And somebody might, $200. I've got $1 million check here. Well, we understand that at some point, many people will buy it at that point. But of course, that's not the world we're living in, where people will offer you $1 million to buy a product made under horrible conditions. And most firms, the Gap, as you may know, when the minute that came out that one of their subcontractors had let things out to where it was literally child labor slavery, instantly reacted. Because they know that would be if that got widely thing, and they thought that this is what they permitted. So we have this. The low standards are risky to multinationals. Nike, which is now widely regarded as one of the best companies in this world, every time there were protests of students and other groups against them when they were not a good person in this world, their share price fell. And you would see these newspaper stories that would say, it was Phil Knight, I think that's the name of the man who heads Nike, or he just lost, $10 million today in his share prices because of this. And then you started to figure, how much does it cost to clean up some of the violations that were found? And it turns out peanuts. It's not that expensive in general. Shareholders have spoken. And it can even be dangerous to a country if they're known as a low standards country. CalPERS at various times has said they're not going to invest in your country, and so forth. And I put at the bottom, I think is the key thing, the pressure for standards in part comes from globalization. It's because we now buy the products, wear the products, consume the products made overseas. We don't want to feel that what we're buying, wearing, or consuming is made under terrible conditions. So we want to know some information about that. And without globalization, well, Bangladesh would just take care of itself. But now they sell to us, and they have to worry about these things. So who is in this market? Again, this is a very economics-oriented view. Well, they're the people agitators. I call them human rights vigilantes. They're out there campaigning. They have to find out what's going on, and they raise these campaigns. Nike's doing bad things. They had an interesting campaign which failed completely. They had Catholic nuns marching in front of Disney headquarters. Disney was paying children in Haiti, I don't know, 1 cent an hour, some absolutely obscene amount of money. And Disney, they just couldn't get consumers worked up about Mickey Mouse. And I have these little buttons that say, don't buy Mickey Mouse. Didn't work. So these agitators have to find the right message to deliver on the right companies, the right products, and at the right time to get consumers worked up. There are governments all over that are involved in this. The labor ministries in developing countries are usually the weakest ministries in those countries. And one obvious way you could improve standards is you strengthen those ministries so they became more effective and efficient. And the advanced country policies, the one interesting thing about the Bush administration is in our free trade agreements, they have kept in the labor clauses that we began putting in Cambodia and so on. So even an administration that you don't regard as particularly friendly to labor has stuck with these things as part of our policies. The workers and unions, the multinationals. At the bottom, it all depends on the consumers. Because if the consumers will shun the products made under bad conditions and willing to pay a little bit more for the products made under good conditions, a company that has no morality will look and say, it's more profitable to make things under good conditions, therefore I'll do it. And that I think is absolutely fundamental. So now we have a question. And when I first began working in this area, I did these surveys. And of course, some economists in particular, but anybody can reasonably say, oh, you did a survey that said how much people said they would pay extra for a product made under good conditions. We were a little more subtle about the way we did it, but basically that's what we did. And maybe that's not true. And in some of the social science literature, that's called a stated choice. I mean, they told you what they would do, and we didn't observe what they actually would do. And then I put in brackets, but it's hard to convince my economics friends about this, and in any case, it's better to have real choice in any case. But there's a whole body of literature, particularly in marketing, that says stated choice is really very good. People, we've seen the polls and the stated choice is some of these poll questions before an election, and we've seen they can miss the things for various reasons, and they're always confused, but generally they work. Generally they give you a pretty good idea of what's going on. So the same thing is here. These activists wouldn't be in business if they couldn't have some successes, so we see that. The companies respond, that's another sign that the only reason the companies are doing it is because they fear that the consumers are going to pay attention. And then I said the share prices. So there's a lot of evidence that just says, yeah, well, why is everybody paying attention to this if it isn't that consumers won't buy the products under bad conditions, et cetera? We had great success. We had the Pope was lined up